For the purpose of this project, Africa is divided into three regions: Eastern, Western, and Southern. Africa's energy usage will be discussed, as will its potential for energy in the future. Zach focused on the Western region in South Africa. Chris focused on Eastern Africa. Scott focused on Africa's carbon footprint and its future direction. As evident by the image, less than 75% of Africa's residents are without reliable electrical power. The nations of Eastern Africa are as follows: Libya, Egypt, Chad, Sudan, Central African Republic, Eritrea, Democratic Republic of the Congo, Ethiopia, Djibouti, Somalia, Kenya, Rwanda, Burundi, Tanzania, Malawi, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, and the island nation of Madagascar. Several countries, for instance Eritrea, Ethiopia, Tanzania, Kenya, Malawi, Somalia, and Rwanda, fall well under the United Nations minimum per capita of 50 kilowatt hours to sustain basic human existence. Not surprisingly, these countries have rampant poverty and violence, especially to women. Energy usage in these countries is limited to small diesel-powered grids, or more commonly burning wood. The bulk of energy utilization in Eastern Africa is located along the Mediterranean coast, namely Libya and Egypt. Both countries have gone through major political events in recent years. However, their energy grids remain intact. Libya is mostly desert, but it does have a large deposit of fossil fuels and the potential to be a major source of solar energy. Egypt also has large deposits of fossil fuels, and unlike Libya, currently enjoys a political climate conducive to solar power and wind power. The Democratic Republic of the Congo rests upon one of the largest deposits of fossil fuels, second only to Algeria. It also utilizes a significant amount of hydroelectric power. 95% of people living in rural parts of East Africa have no access to electricity in their homes. However, one half of the population has a cell phone. The improvements made in the telecom market have caused a rapid increase in gasification reactors to provide power to cell phone towers and central charging stations. Egypt is the largest user of bioenergy in East Africa, due in large part to its Sustainable Rural Energy Project. In partnership with the Egyptian Environmental Affairs Agency, the project limits the barriers to new energy so that the rural residents of Egypt can have a more reliable form of electricity and limit the use of fossil fuel generators. East Africa is rich in coal deposits, and coal mining brings a needed boost to local economies. In particular, Kenya sits upon one of the largest coal reserves and possesses a stable government with aspirations to see Kenya grow industrially. Kenya expects to double its per capita electricity usage by 2040 in hopes of becoming an industrial power in East Africa. Egypt is the largest non-OPEC oil producer in Africa and the second largest producer of natural gas. Over 50% of Egypt's electricity is produced by natural gas, and 40% of Africa's natural gas usage is caused by Egypt. Hydropower has been in use in many East African countries for years. However, it is difficult to expand and only provides electricity to 1/4 of the population. Several countries, such as Kenya, Ethiopia, and Rwanda, are investing heavily in renewable energy due to rapid scalability, and renewable energy is the most cost-effective way to bring power to the 75% of the population that does not have it. Solar power is a leading energy source due to the tropical climate. Many mini and microgrids have been established, especially in Rwanda, providing electricity to thousands of residents. Ethiopia is a large leader in wind energy, producing 200 megawatts from its 3 wind plants. It also has a large potential for more wind energy. Kenya currently leads with 350 megawatts of geothermal energy and has the potential for 10,000 megawatts.
The countries within the western region of Africa that I decided to focus on were Nigeria, Ivory Coast, Ghana, Mali, Sierra Leone, Cameroon, and the country of South Africa. These countries are some of the wealthiest countries within the continent and also the poorest. As you would guess, the GDP of a country directly relates to the utilization of modern energy. So as you can see from the chart, the wealthiest countries in Africa are Nigeria and South Africa. The main utilization of energy for these regions, rich or poor, tend to be the use of bioenergy in its simplest form, fossil fuels, and also the use of natural gas. Now, South Africa accounts for 70% of the coal energy demand in all of Africa. This is the only country within the continent that utilizes coal as a main source of energy for their power sector. a lot like the United States. An interesting fact about the coal energy in South Africa is that this country also uses coal to liquid energy for transport fuel for trucks or other automobiles. Nigeria is a country that utilizes natural gas. Now, Nigeria uses this form of energy the most of all of Africa, which is still a very low number of just 9% of the country's demand. The only other country in the western region of Africa to utilize natural gas is the Ivory Coast, which is just under 1% of its energy demand. Electricity within the western and southern regions is hard to come by, as you'd think. Mostly powered by generators running on gasoline or diesel, electricity is still used, however just not reliable. Overall, modern renewable sources such as hydropower, solar, wind, and geothermal accounts for less than 2% of the western and southern energy sources, although some countries are taking advantage. As far as hydropower in this region, the only real utilization of hydropower within Africa is the Democratic Republic of Congo, which has a population of about 79 million people. Their main source of energy is electricity provided by hydroelectric plants within the Congo River called Inga 3 project. This project is projected to be completed around the year 2020 and produce about 40,000 megawatts of electricity, which is over twice the power generation of the Three Gorges Dam in China, which we went over in class.
Africa is the second largest continent in the world, second only to Asia. However, it has the lowest amount of CO2 emissions at 1,122 million tons as of 2009. This sounds good, however it's somewhat deceiving, being that it's a very large continent and very limited in population. For the purpose of this section of the presentation, we have divided Africa into 3 regions. The first region, South Africa, accounts for 38% of Africa's total CO2 emissions. Its total emissions is 465 million tons. The source of its emissions mainly comes from coal. Region 2 consists of Egypt, Algeria, Nigeria, Libya, and Morocco, and it accounts for 46% of Africa's total CO2 emissions. Its total emissions is 484 million tons, and its main source is Egypt, is mainly from natural gas and oil. Algeria is mainly from natural gas. Nigeria is mainly from biomass and waste. Libya is mainly from oil, and Morocco is mainly from petroleum products. So Region 1 accounts for 38% of Africa's total, and Region 2 accounts for 46% of Africa's total CO2 emissions. Combined, that's 84% of Africa's CO2 emissions, even though the size of Region 1 and 2 combined is smaller than Region number 3. Region 3, which consists of every other region in Africa, has a total emissions of 195 million tons. Its main source of emissions comes mainly from biomass. Future direction. For this section of the report, Africa will be divided into the same regions as for the carbon emissions. Region number 1, South Africa, is based largely upon their forthcoming carbon tax. Gross polluters will still pollute because of South Africa's natural resources. However, with the carbon tax, their profits will be reduced. The tax, which will flow to the government, will help fund clean energy. If the gross polluters decide to pass the bill along onto the consumers, the increased charges will make the marketplace right for clean energy. The future direction for region number 2, Egypt, Algeria, Nigeria, Libya, and Morocco, will require a varied approach. Egypt, with oil as one of their main sources of power generation, should consider a carbon tax similar to South Africa's, but most likely at a lower tax rate, unfortunately. Algeria is a developing country, and with the financial help from the major industrial countries, they could start with a larger degree of clean energy and utilize carbon emission reducers on gross polluters. For example, gross polluters could lessen their effect with scrubbers. Nigeria has the ability to increase its mining of uranium, for which they can sell to countries who currently use nuclear energy, as well as to countries such as South Africa and Egypt, who will most likely increase their use of nuclear energy. They can use this money to purchase clean energy from abroad, as well as increase production of their own renewable energy sources. Libya presents difficulty in investing in either pollution control devices or clean energy due to their government difficulties. Morocco lacks the availability of all fossil fuels at this time, but they are starting to exploit solar energy. Region number 3, which consists of all the other African countries, is sparsely populated and unindustrialized, and thereby has low carbon emitters. Rather than avoiding this region due to its low carbon emissions, this region should be capitalized upon with the use of investor capital to produce and market clean energy for export and to better the lives of the people living in the region.
Now, as a whole, the country of Africa consumes merely 3% of the total energy produced within the world. Seeing as this country holds over 15% of the world's population, there are many potentials in energy production and usage given the climate and terrain of the continent. Energy Outlook, a journal by the International Energy Agency, claims that the sub-Saharan Africa has more people living without access to electricity than any other world region. More than 620 million people in nearly half of the globe total. It is also the only region in the world where the number of people living without electricity is increasing. Bioenergy is dominant in the energy mix of the sub-Saharan Africa, accounting for more than 60% of total use. Now, this use of biomass energy is strictly talking about the simplest form, which is the burning of wood or other biomass that can burn to produce heat. Cooking is the primary use of this energy throughout Africa. Africa has quite the potential for renewable energy sources, such as solar panels across the desert plains, or hydro plants within the Congo River, or even wind turbines on top of the pyramids. Though physical action has not taken place just yet, there are paper plans to utilize the resources available to this continent. Thank you all for watching the utilization of energy within Africa.